I get asked all the time, hey, Daniel, what kind of gear are you using? Like what microphones, what software, what are your computer systems, what are your speakers, what kind of headphones do you like? But there's actually a few pieces of gear that I use every single day that I could not live without that nobody ever asks me about. Today, I want to tell you about three of them. The number one piece of gear that really is the heart of my studio is this right here. It's my PreSonus Studio Live AR16C. And let me tell you why this is so important to me. Every creator out there who's doing anything with audio knows that they probably need to get a decent XLR microphone. And the minute you buy an XLR microphone, that means you need to purchase some form of audio interface, like a mic preamp that allows your analog signal to turn into digital and go to your computer and allows you to hear all the things that you want to hear coming through your microphone. Now, I've got a stack of these all over my office because I've used different ones over different periods of time for different reasons. And I have more microphones than I can count. I've got one here, I've got one over there in Studio B, I have another one above my head for whenever I want the microphone not to be in shot, and Megan has one over at her desk for when she's working with me, especially on things like live streams. The problem is a lot of these smaller units, as great as they are, only allow for maybe one or two microphones, and they're not very controllable. It's basically in and out. You have a headphone mix, not much else. And when it comes to using some of my fancier microphones like the Shure SM7B, I have to use some form of a cloud lifter or something to give it a little extra gain in line because even those little preamp units aren't enough to really boost those quieter mics enough. That's where this board handles all of that and more. The PreSonus Studio Live AR16C is actually an 18-channel mixing board that comes complete with 12 separate XLR inputs. Now, it connects directly to my computer via USB-C, just like my other interfaces would, and has really quality mic pre's and great sound quality. I'm actually recording all of my audio right now through that board. But beyond just simple microphone inputs, the board has 1/4-inch phono in. It's also got stereo 1/4-inch in, which is something you don't really find in a lot of other units. It's even got RCA inputs for old school things like turntables that you can connect into it. It's got a bunch of onboard digital effects built right in, like reverbs and delays to really take your voice to another level for certain applications. But what I really like about this board is it's got a few features that really make my studio totally pro. It's got a Bluetooth connection for things like iPad or iPhone, or I can even connect an entirely different system or laptop right in through that board using Bluetooth. It's got an SD card reader and recorder so that I can record stereo right inside of the board if anything comes up that I just want to quickly record and put it onto a card. I don't even have to fire up my computer. It's got full parametric EQ on every single channel, including sweepable mids, which gives you a lot of tonal control for your audio signal. It's got low-cut filters on every channel so that you can immediately cut all that sort of boomy low-end stuff in your vocals that can be annoying. It's got phantom power for all of your mics that require that, but then it's got multiple different output controls, including your FX, your multiple auxiliary sends, your mains, and even a control room feed that's separate from your main outs if you want to set up a headphone Q mix. All of the channels come with the things you really expect from a high-quality board, including mutes, the pre-fader listen so you can hear the dry signal even if you've added effects on. You don't have to turn off everything that you have going on. You can click a button and hear the dry signal coming right into the board. You can pan all of these tracks left and right inside of the stereo field. It's even got the 3.5mm micro jack that you can plug things directly in like phones, iPads, other things that use smaller connection points. The best thing I like about this board is I've been using PreSonus gear for over 10 years, and I bought this board myself. They didn't give this to me. And don't tell PreSonus, but when I first got it and I was mounting it here onto this swivel arm, I actually dropped it before I had the mounting in place, and it crashed down 4 feet to the ground, landed right on the corner before I had ever even powered it up for the first time. I put it back up there, got it mounted correctly, turned it on. There wasn't a crack in the housing, and it worked perfectly. So one thing I do like about PreSonus is they definitely make quality gear that can take a little bit of abuse. Now, even with all this functionality of having a board like this right next to me, I only have 2 hands, and sometimes trying to push all the buttons can get a little tricky. That's where this next piece of equipment comes in super handy. This is the Rolls Mic Mute MM11 Pro. Now, it's got a lot of numbers and letters attached to it for a very simple tool that we use every day. What this is it's a very small stomp box that allows you to plug your microphone in and then back out to the board, and it can be set up to either mute your mic or turn your mic on depending on the configuration. For instance, in Megan's situation, we put it on her microphone, and while she's working with me on the live streams, she doesn't always want to have her mic live. So she sets it up that whenever she steps on the button, it'll actually turn the mic on and she can talk, she takes her foot off, and the mic is muted again. And it's something that I don't have to constantly guess when she wants her mic on or off. You can set it up in the other direction so that when you push it, it mutes instead of activating, so either or. And it's a simple functionality of a dip switch they have on the side. Click it to whichever position you like, and now you've got full control of muting or activating your microphone from your feet instead of your hands. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is something that you've actually been seeing in action so far with some of the footage I've been showing you. And it's this right here. This is the Dymo Lectra Tag Label Maker. And it's a very simple tool that just allows me to make labels for my studio. Now, you might be saying to yourself, like, why is that important, Daniel? It's the label maker. But I can't tell you how many different cables, buttons, switches, knobs, power supplies, things like that I have kicking around the studio that are very easy to confuse which one is which. Anytime I pull my computer system apart because I want to upgrade the CPU or the GPU or the motherboard, or even pull it out to completely blow it out and clean it out and put it back in place, all of those cables that are plugged into the back, it's really hard to remember what each one is and where they're supposed to go. So I just label each one of them and I know immediately what each one is and where they need to be plugged back into. I also use that same label maker to label all the channels on my PreSonus Studio Live AR16C mixing board. That way I know what each fader is controlling and I don't have to guess or try to remember what each one is. It's written right there. I also use it on my headphone Q mix so I know which volume knob sends which signal to which set of headphones in the studio. But I can't tell you how many times I've had power supplies, cables, things that came with different products that I might be not using at the moment, laptop power supplies, that all kind of look the same. And when I wrap them up and put them aside, it's hard for me to remember which was the right one that went with which. And sometimes they're very power specific. So putting simple labels on all these things allows me to keep my studio super organized and always working the way it's supposed to. One thing I really like about this is I've had several different types of label makers, but what's really cool about this one is that I don't need to connect it to my phone, download any apps, or even plug it in. It runs on AA batteries, which I've never even changed in the 4 years that I've owned this one. It has internal ribbon cartridges that last a really long time that you just pop in, you start typing, and you hit print. It spits it out the side. There's a little button you click to actually slice that label free. And one of the things that I actually love, and it may be silly to other people, is I have a real hard time pulling the backs off of labels sometimes. Like I don't have long fingernails and it's hard for me to get them separated or started. These ones have a split right in the middle down the whole back, so you just sort of press them in half long ways and it easily allows you to pull the backing off, even if you're a fumble fingers like me. Now, I do have to thank our good friends at PreSonus and Sweetwater for sponsoring today's video. If you're interested in any of the gear that I've talked about here today, I'll make sure that I leave links down below where you can go and check them out yourself. And if you have any really cool studio gear that you absolutely can't live without, tell me about it in the comments below. I'm always looking for new gear that might help me streamline my workflow and get things done a little bit more effectively. Speaking of which, I actually have to get back to work, but if you haven't seen my entire studio layout before, check out the video on screen where I kind of walk through some of the things that I've got going on and how I built this studio from the ground up. Peace.